Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice Podcast, episode 367. I'm your host, Ohio pharmacist Kim Newlove. Today's episode is part of the Pharmacist Podcasters Series. My guest today is a fellow podcaster, also an Ohio pharmacist. She's a friend and she's a returning podcast guest. It's Dr. Emlah Tubuo. You can find Emlah's bio, website, podcast links, newsletter sign up link, and so much more in the show notes for today's episode on thepharmacistvoice.com. If you're new to this series, welcome. Again, today's episode is part of the Pharmacist Podcasters Series. In this series, my guests and I talk about podcasting to inspire you to start your own podcast, be a podcast guest, or just use your voice in general. If you are interested in podcasting, podguesting, or public speaking, you need to listen to this episode. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Emlah Tubuo. Hi, Emlah. Welcome back to the Pharmacist's Voice podcast.
Thank you, Kim, for having me. I'm honored to be back here.
It's my pleasure to have you. This is a little more official than last time. Last time you were on the show, I looked it up. It was episode 143. And I pulled you aside at the Ohio Pharmacists Association annual conference. It was back in 2022. It was 4 years ago. We had a little conversation because you had a table at the trade show there at the conference, and it said Emlah Naturals, I believe. So I was like, what is this? And you came onto the show to talk about that. And that was one of my first on-the-spot interviews at a conference. So you're a trailblazer. That's what you did. You blazed the trail for other people to come on the podcast live on site.
You look at a trailblazer, and behind every trailblazer is another trailblazer pushing that trailblazer ahead. You made me do that. So I was like, how are we going to record a podcast? There's no studio. And you pulled out your purse and you took out a microphone and you took out all the stuff. And I'm like, this girl is a walking office. She is always ready. And so we went into another conference, another room, and just did all the recording. It was amazing. And I was like, you know what? I was about to turn down the opportunity to say, you know what? I need to be more prepared. I need to sit down and structure myself. But I just remembered something I had read from I can't remember the book I read it in, and they said, every time an opportunity gets presented in front of you, accept it. Accept it, because you never know what's going to come out of there. And I got a friend from that. So I'm honored to be here again in a very formal way. But that was a beautiful experience, and it took away within the first 2 minutes, the fear disappeared because you made it so easy.
Thank you so much for saying that. I remember your husband was waiting for you. I think I pulled you into a dining room, if I remember right. Anyways, he was so gracious. And afterwards, you were smiling so big. I don't know, he couldn't have been mad at you. But I was really proud of you for saying yes. And you might have wanted to be more prepared, but you just did the thing anyways. And 4 years later, well, actually, not even that, 3.5 years later, you have your own podcast. So that's what got you on the show today. I want to make sure that my audience knows about your podcast and is inspired by what you have to say about your experience with podcasting. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's just, I can't even verbalize it, how honored I am to be here, because this is what life is, helping each other. I say holding hands on this journey of life. When I launched the podcast, I told myself, it's almost the same thing. I kept telling myself, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I talked with Tim. I had about 3 meetings with him, breakfast. And he goes, Emlah, go ahead and do it. And I said, well, hold on, let me get myself together. And I kept saying, you know what, Emlah, if I continue to say I'm not ready until I'm ready, that podcast will never be launched. So I decided to go ahead and launch it anyways. And once I launched it, I got an email from a friend, and there was a typo on my page, on the launch page. And that friend was Kim. I thank you so much. This is what I say, have a village around you. And I hope that your audience, everybody listening, can have that person who is, they're always on your side. And, if I put out an email, or I put out a post, or I launch a website, or I would launch a podcast, and there's a typo on it, they immediately email me, say, Emlah, please fix this. I checked out your website. I noticed this. Fixed it right on the spot. I was giggling. My team was laughing so hard. They're like, Emlah, thank God you have eyes all over the world. So I thank you for that still.
You are welcome. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. That's been like 6 months ago already. But I
Yeah.
watch out for other podcasters because I want to see what they're doing. I like to learn from other podcasters. And if you have broccoli in your teeth, I'm going to tell you about it. And that's what happened. I don't want you to be embarrassed. I want you to feel supported. But also, if there's something wrong, I want you to know there are people rooting for you who will point out if you have broccoli in your teeth or a mistake on your website.
I tell my patients that all the time, and I tell them, listen, if you meet a healthcare provider or clinician who thinks that they can do it all, run away, run 180 degrees. Because in healthcare, in our lives, what we want to think about it is that I always use the analogy of a boardroom. And I say, my health is, my company, and I am the president of the board. And I have board members who are physical trainer, nutritionist, my primary care, my GP, and my endocrinologist, and my OBGYN, and all these people are on my board, and I'm the president. So I gather all this information from them. They give me feedback on how to lead the best life possible, a very healthy life, and a fulfilled and intentional life, because that's my goal. So I have all these people on my board, and I implore everybody to find your board members, people who will help you in life, work, parenting, just self-care. And because none of us, no matter how brave, intelligent, smart, or academically qualified we are, none of us can do life by ourselves.
Well said. I always like to say I can't see my own blind spots, but I like what you said too. You make it sound more like a collaborative effort to move forward intentionally, right?
Yes.
That's your word. I totally get it. I noticed that you put that word in your podcast name. So you started a podcast and it's called Intentional Living with Emlah Podcast, right? Yes, I'm so proud of you. I remember you putting your artwork, I think it was on Instagram or LinkedIn or something, and you were trying to get people to tell you what they thought the best image was. And I don't know if I picked the one you ended up with, but they were all good.
I can't remember. I had hundreds of people do a voting, and I just wanted to be sure that they look appealing, because all of them, I had stared at them for like days, and I had my children vote, and I had one that I secretly liked, and the one that I secretly liked ended up not being the one that everybody else liked. So such is life. But I'm just grateful for all the feedback and just the beauty and joy of the journey, and having people help me, even to little things like selecting the logo or selecting the artwork. It's exhilarating. It reminds us that we are truly not on this journey alone.
We are not on the journey alone. You are totally right about that. And I think you built some excitement around your podcast when you showed that to us. Number one, I didn't know you were starting a podcast. And then number two, I felt like I kind of got to be part of it, which was cool, even if you didn't pick the one I voted for. Well, for my audience who may not be aware of your podcast, I want to make sure that they know what it's all about and where they can find it, and maybe a good episode to start with. So, if you don't mind, can you talk about what is intentional living with Emlah all about?
So I decided to start this podcast. So first of all, I am a pharmacist, and originally I'm from Cameroon, so West Central Africa. Did my undergrad there, did a master's in Chicago, at Chicago State University. Then I did my doctoral of pharmacy at Ohio State University. And working, when I finished from the Ohio State University, I worked with Kroger for a little bit, worked at Children's Hospital as an ambulatory care pharmacist, and now I own Powell Pharmacy, which is an independent pharmacy here in Powell, Ohio. And the reason why I started Powell Pharmacy was to be able to do healthcare a little different, to be able to integrate, because we live in a society of extreme polarity. So if you think about it, just around when we met, during that COVID time, there is people, I am for vaccines. I am not for vaccines. Now I am for GLP-1s. I am not for GLP-1s. Or I am for supplements. Or I am not for supplements. Or I am going to take a biologic. Or I'm not going to do a biologic. Or I am for blood transfusions. I am not. You keep on everything. You have extreme polarity. But then I look at it, and I look at my patients, and I say, nobody has the desire and the end goal of taking a medication. Nobody has the end goal of having a shot being injected. The end goal is optimal health. The end goal is a fulfilled life. So how can we use these health resources, the toolkits, the advances in modern medicine, and our lifestyle to be able to lead to that ultimate fulfilled life and that ultimate healthy living that we're looking for, to lead the best version of ourselves? So I came up with intentional living to be able to integrate both worlds. Because as a pharmacist, I have seen firsthand the use of modern medicine, the advances, the diseases, and the states of living today that we would never have achieved if it were not for the advances of modern medicine. So it is reason why I'm here. It is reason why a lot of people are alive today, because some of these medications have kept us alive. But then with those come some side effects too. And then there's also the fact that we can prevent getting to some of those chronic diseases. So how can we marry them together? And instead of using the word instead of, let's use in addition to. So in addition to, not instead of. So that's where I came up with integrative pharmacy and then intentional living as that umbrella. So we combine, and I used analogy of four legs of a table and using them as the pillars of intentional living. And so imagine a table with a platform and then four legs on there. And those four legs are nutrition, inner alignment, positive social connections, and movement. So those four legs of the table come together to give that intentional living. So, and I named the podcast Intentional Living with Emlah. So I bring my clinical aptitude, I bring other guests on there who can help us use those four pillars to actually achieve the life that we desire to achieve and live for ourselves. That's really the backstory of intentional living, because none of these exist in silos. So how can we marry them and get the best out of it?
Gotcha. It sounds like you talk about the combination of Western medicine and also the integrative medicine. So the in addition to. Gotcha.
Yes.
And I think my audience would love it so much if you could repeat those four pillars of intentional living.
Yes, I love it. So I always say, think of a table, and that table has the surface, the platform, and those four legs are, number one is nutrition. Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So what are you putting on your plate? If you come to the pharmacy with a prescription for metformin, I'm going to be dispensing it to you, and I will say, hi, Emlah, this metformin is for you to help reduce your blood sugar levels, and it's going to help to control your diabetes so you don't get the complications of diabetes. You have to take this every day, and you have to take it with food. And I tell you all about metformin and the side effects, and I tell you, you have this number of refills. I will see you next month. In addition to that, what else can you do when you go back home to make sure that metformin works to the best of its ability? What food are you putting on your plate to support that metformin to work? So that's the first pillar of nutrition. Then the second pillar is movement. I can give you metformin every day, 30 tablets a day to take for the whole year. If you go home, take your metformin, sit on the couch, eat your chips, drink your Sprite and Coke, and sit on the couch all day long, eat McDonald's, Wendy's for breakfast and lunch and dinner, you are not going to control your blood sugar until you get off the couch and move your body in the simplest way possible. It doesn't have to be a fancy gym. It doesn't have to be 1 hour at a fancy Pilates studio or fancy yoga. You could just get up and move around the block. Just get up, move to the end of your road and come back, or just 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. Anything is better than nothing. So move your body. That's number two pillar. So number one pillar was nutrition. Number two is movement. Number three is inner alignment. So inside our body, the tiny little chemicals, their enzymes, their hormones, all these little things that make up, those biomarkers that make up our whole organs and make up these systems and help us function to the best of our ability. So not everybody is a scientist, not everybody can go in and study all these chemical pathways, but how can we, to the best of our ability, measure those biomarkers? Like, what are your estrogen levels? What are your vitamin D levels? Have you taken a calcium score? Have you done a colonoscopy? All these little tests and biomarkers that we go to our primary healthcare providers and our specialists to take care of, they measure those, then they convert those from the lab values to actionable items that we can use to change and improve our health. So that's one part of the inner alignment, those biomarkers in our body. And the other inner alignment piece is that there are certain things which we can do that can help those biomarkers. Think of meditation or think of prayer. or think of journaling, or think of just walking in the forest. So when you do some of these things, or laughter, or dancing, when you do some of these things, they help to align those neurotransmitters. Think of our happiness chemicals and those neurotransmitters like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, all those big words. Those are the tiny little chemicals that keep us happy in our brain. So how can we get more of those chemicals? And when we get those chemicals, how can we preserve those chemicals? Make sure those chemicals are staying in our body a little longer so that they keep us happy. That's the piece of inner alignment. And there's several things that we can do to make sure that our inner alignment is wonderful and optimal to make us feel better about ourselves. That way we can continue to lead the life that we want to lead. And so after inner alignment, the last pillar is positive social connections. Like we hinted to it at the beginning of the podcast. No matter how great you are, you cannot do it alone. You're not that special. We need each other. We need each other. So an 85-year-long study from Harvard University determined that the biggest contributor to a fulfilled and long life is the value and the quality of your relationships. So spending time with people who you love, people who love you, people who have similar values, and people who bring a smile, not just to your face, but to your heart, people who truly get you. And you get to select those people. That is the beauty of life. You get to find those people and spend time with them, and they uplift you and you uplift them. So prioritizing those relationships which are optimal to you and to each, you get to select these relationships. And that is positive social connections. You can have all the first three pillars, right? If the fourth pillar is lacking, you'll never lead an optimal life. So we have to be very, very strategic about spending time with people that we love. We just cannot be spending time alone. Loneliness is a high risk factor, not just for cardiovascular disease, but for there's a lot of data around it, and I could share some of those studies with you as well.
You said strategic, but I was waiting for you to say intentional. Like, be
It is.
intentional
It's
about who you
all
spend time with.
intentional. Yes, it is. It is. It's the intentional. So those four pillars, and then the platform, the surface of the table is the intentional living. So it's being held up by those four pillars.
Gotcha. That was beautiful. Excellent job talking about nutrition, movement, inner alignment, and social connections. I just want to throw out there that I've been listening to some of the episodes of the podcast. I think you're up to 24 or 25.
Yes, I am.
25
Yes,
episodes.
thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. I was listening to the vitamin D episode when I was at the gym of all places. When I was listening to it, you were joking that you can't be my friend unless your vitamin D level is a 70 or greater. And I meant to look mine up before talking to you. I think mine is at 37. So,
Point of correction, I was not joking, Kim. To all your listeners right now, I was not joking. We're going to have to rectify your vitamin D levels in order to rectify our friendship.
I've been building it up. I think it started at 20 by the time they caught it. It was terrible. And I have noticed that as it's built up, it's taken a long time. I think I've been taking vitamin D. It's the sublingual tincture every day, like 4,000 IU with the K2 in it.
Yes.
For about 18 months. And I think I'm at 37, but that was back in July, I think, when I had my annual checkup. It's probably closer to 40, but I do not get sick as often. Upper respiratory tract infections and whatnot. I'm telling you, what you talk about in that episode, I am seeing in my own life. I can't wait to see what happens when I'm at 70, but would you agree that it does take some time to build that level back up after it's been at 20 for God knows how long? Because we do live at, what did you call it? The 37th parallel. We're up here in Ohio. I mean,
Yes.
you're in Columbus. I'm in Toledo.
No difference. We're here in Ohio and we're above the 37th parallel. So we're not getting that much vitamin D from the sun, even if we're spending all the time outside, and I tell my clients that I say, you can go outside and spend the whole time naked outside in Ohio. You're not going to get as much vitamin D as somebody in Florida or in the Caribbean islands. So, but here's what's going to happen. We're going to have to boost, another way to boost that vitamin D instead of hanging out down there in the below 30s. It's usually every time I see somebody below 30, I give them a 50,000. I do give them a 50,000 once a week. for 15 weeks. And so that brings them up. So think about it from my pharmacist brain like a loading dose, because I don't want you to tarry around down there for a very long time. So I give a 50,000 once a week, and it brings you up above 40. And then we maintain with a 5,000 D3K2. So I'm going to switch you to an Emlah Naturals vitamin D, which you'll be getting in the mail after this podcast. So you'll be getting vitamin D 50,000. So because here's what happens. Typically, so there was a study where the study people had a cardiovascular event, and all their vitamin D was below 30. And so causation or correlation, they were like, there has to be something with this. So every time somebody gets discharged from the hospital after a cardiovascular event, you usually see a prescription, 50,000 to take once a week come with that, just to boost them up to get them to a good level. And then after that, there's usually not much follow-up on the vitamin D levels. We let the people slide back because they finished that, or we give them 1,000, which is typically not enough. 1 to 3 years, we see them with another cardiovascular event. Not that this is the primary cause of the cardiovascular event. We could, in addition to, and that K2 to help to reduce calcium from the arteries. So just help reducing the calcium score. So just helping our cardiovascular health. And the part for us women is vitamin D is helpful to prevent osteoporosis, to make sure that our calcium goes to the bone. We don't want to wait until we're 65 and then we do our bone density scan at that time. Now the guidelines are 65, but after the age 50, 1 in 2 women will have a broken bone from osteoporosis. And that is one of the main reasons why I want all my friends to have their vitamin D levels checked and their bone density scan done around 50, because I don't want us to wait until we're 65, because I don't have the time and energy to come visit anybody in the hospital for a broken bone. I'd rather be going around dancing with you and having fun doing all the things that you love to do.
You'd rather be having positive social interactions with me and some movement at the same time.
Got it.
But I got to tell you, I appreciate the suggestion for the 50,000 IU once a week. But I got to tell you, I'm one of those people, one of those rare people who really struggles to take it by mouth. And that's why I ended up with the sublingual tincture. It took me forever to figure it out, but I got really sick, like GI side effects. And it turns out I'm not the only person. But you didn't know my history. You are an excellent listener. And I know that you, like you were talking about earlier, there's more than one way to do things. And so I think that if I had shared my history with you first, then you would have probably said something else. But thank you for proposing something.
This is why we do the consult, at Powell Pharmacy, which I do have 4 pharmacists on staff, and this is all they do. They sit down with patients. We do a comprehensive health review. We sit down with our patients for 45 minutes as an intake. So for these 45 minutes, we listen to you. But before you even come, we make you fill out a form, answer some questions about yourself. There are about 20 questions that you do before and we do some lab testing. We launch the Journeys lab testing, and we do the lab testing, and you fill out an intake form. So we have subjective data about you, the things that matter to you, the things that are important to you, things you would like to change about your health. And then we get that data. Then we now have your blood work from Journeys. We combine the subjective data and the objective data, we put it together, and then Kim sits in front of us and we have all this information. Then we break it down now to how can we use this data to help Kim meet her goals? And then we use our pharmacist knowledge to be able to transform that data into actionable items that you can use to intentionally step one step at a time towards your personal goals. So that's really what we do at Powell Pharmacy, and it's very fulfilling for us and our patients.
Thank you for telling me about that. You're a traditional independent pharmacy that dispenses medications, but in addition, you offer these services and you call it Journeys. Is that right?
Journeys is the lab testing.
Okay.
So Journeys is the lab testing. And eventually we'll be launching Journeys so I've partnered with Fullscript to be able to launch Journeys to all pharmacists across the country. So eventually that is something that's in the pipe works, and I will be posting that on social media. But I try to keep pharmacists, and because my goal is, in pharmacy school, we do not learn a lot about dietary supplements. And so I usually get asked as a guest lecturer at The Ohio State University to talk about dietary supplements, vitamins, and minerals. So because it's really important, about 70% of the population in the US do take dietary supplements and vitamins and minerals, but we need to make sure that we're not taking ones that interact with our medications. We're not taking ones that are not fit for our disease state. Just the fact that you are taking echinacea, and you're my friend, and I'm like, oh, my girlfriend is taking echinacea, I'm going to take echinacea too. And I could be taking Plavix, and Plavix and echinacea don't work well together. So that's why we want people to come see us at the pharmacy. And I'll be like, oh, Emlah, if you're taking echinacea, you should not be taking Plavix. You cannot take those two together, or Eliquis. What is most important here is your Eliquis. We need you to take your Eliquis every single day. So I'm going to take away that echinacea from your list, and then we can still improve your immune system by giving you something like vitamin C, which will help your immune system, just like the echinacea was doing, but it is fine to go together with your Eliquis. So that way we make it better so you still achieve your goals of health, and then we use our knowledge as a pharmacist to guide you towards that.
Pharmacists, you're right, don't always have a lot of formal education on dietary supplements. It's really nice to hear that you're educating the students at The Ohio State University, your alma mater for PharmD school there. Awesome. She just made this heart symbol with her hands. This is an audio only podcast, so I had to share that with the audience. Let's go back to the podcast, your podcast. It sounds like you talk about these things on the podcast, and who is it for the benefit of? It doesn't sound like you're exactly only talking to pharmacists. It sounds like you're talking to your own patients.
Yes, that's really my goal. My goal is since our pharmacy is located in Powell, Ohio, so all the people in Powell and its environs, the other suburbs and cities around Powell, they're able to come into the pharmacy and get this in-person services. And we have people, since we do have a line of natural supplements, Emlah Naturals, and we ship to all 50 states. And we've had clients, we do people in Ohio, like we had a lady, we did her comprehensive health review and coached her for 2 months. She lost 23 pounds and her cholesterol levels were improved and everything. And she was just, her A1C dropped by 0.7. And it was phenomenal for her. So she connected us with her sister in New York and her girlfriend in Atlanta. She used to live in Atlanta. So we now started doing some comprehensive health reviews for people in other states. And so just discussing. And I said, that's really why the podcast is important, so we can reach a broader audience. And I believe that as pharmacists, we have a gift to share. And if we keep all this knowledge in our heads, we're not benefiting anybody. We're all pharmacists, very knowledgeable. I am just honored to have most of my friends are pharmacists, and they're so smart. People tell me, oh my gosh, Emlah, you're so smart. I'm like, wait till you see my friends. Almost all my friends are pharmacists. I have a ton of friends who are pharmacists, and they are ridiculously smart. But this is the thing with pharmacists, we tend to keep our knowledge to ourselves. But my goal is to encourage and inspire all the pharmacists. Like, take all that knowledge you learned in pharmacy school and share it with the people around you. Share it with your family. Share it with your patients. Share it with your community. And so that's what we're doing on the podcast. So anybody that listens to the podcast, you don't have to be a pharmacist. So you just have to be somebody who wants to improve your health and the health of your family, friends, and community. So we try to take it down and break it down in such a way that somebody who's not a pharmacist can understand all the stuff and knows. After every podcast episode, you have an intentional initiative, one little thing that you can implement in your life and consistently, so it can improve your health outcomes. So that's really what we do with and then we're also for pharmacist resources. I'm a teacher by heart. And so on my website on dremlahtubuo.com, I have a tab which is pharmacist resources. And I have supplement courses on there for pharmacists that can teach pharmacists. So I could do launch and learns with pharmacists if they want to learn to talk about supplements with confidence. So I teach different topics on there, and they can pick whatever topic they want. And I could, do a Zoom with them and teach. And also just different things, strategic business consulting for pharmacists. There's tons of resources on there for pharmacists. So it's on my website at dremlahtubuo.com. I'll give you the link so you can share in the show notes for your audience if there are any pharmacists listening to you and they'd like to connect with me.
Of course. I will put those in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like, yes, you are trying to reach your own patients, but then reach a broader audience with the podcast. And I am sure that your podcast has statistics like mine does, and you're probably reaching people not just in the United States, but abroad. Can you tell me what have you learned about your audience since you started podcasting?
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. When I looked at the statistics, I was impressed. I was blown away. We have majority of our listeners are in the US, but we have listeners in Australia. We have listeners in the Netherlands. In Australia really shocked me. We had tons of listeners in Australia, in the Netherlands, and Ivory Coast, and Nigeria. It was just, I was, it just in Cameroon, because I'm from Cameroon, so we have some listeners from Cameroon. So, and we have listeners in South Africa. It's always nice to look at the stats at the end of the month and see a new country pop up on there. It just makes me so happy. Even if it's one person listening from Egypt, it just makes me so happy. What blessing we have to be able to share the knowledge that we have with people across the world.
Yes. Sharing is caring, of course, but also it's exciting for us because it's validation. Our voices are reaching other people and in fact beyond the United States like you just said. I know that feeling and I can see the excitement in your eyes. And we're pharmacists and we love data, right? So I mean, that's just like double fun.
I was clicking on it. I was like, are they listening? So because you can listen to the Intentional Living with Emlah podcast on either Apple Podcast, you can do it on Spotify, or also on YouTube. So I'm like, is it from Apple Podcast? Is it from Spotify? Is it from YouTube where they're listening the most? And it's just, and are they female? Are they male? I just looking at all the data. It's just how many downloads and how many subscriptions and how many reviews. And I appreciate you. You were one of the first people to give me a review. Of course, the pharmacist voice gives me a review. That is validation for me. And so I am so honored and thank you for the review. And those are some of the little things that really boost confidence because you've been doing this for so long and you advise me like, microphones and all the things, the technical stuff, that is your forte. It's like know thyself. I know my people and I know what my people know. That's one of the strengths of being a wonderful pharmacist. Either I know the answer or I know exactly where to get the answer from. So I know the questions that I reach out to you with, and that I encourage my listeners to always have those kind of people in their life. I know if I have a question about podcasting, I know if I have a question about these technicalities, I can reach out to Kim. If I have a question about transplant medicine or this, I can reach out to my friend who works at a transplant pharmacy. Oncology pharmacist, if I need to go deep there, I have a friend who is at oncology at children's, and I can reach out to them. That's what makes a great healthcare provider. We work as a healthcare team. We work together for the best and optimal outcome for our patients.
It's nice to have a tribe of people that you can talk to, too. You said you have a lot of pharmacists who are friends, and I've
Yeah.
noticed that a lot of your guests have been friends. I hear you talking to them, "Oh, you are my friend," and,
Yes.
I believe that. You make friends easily. I have seen this in person. We go to the Ohio Pharmacists Association annual meeting, and I am always seeing you hugging people and talking to people. It seems like everybody knows you, and you're a trustee for your region, or at least you were at one point. So that means, you have your own geographic area where you are responsible for certain outcomes. And I just wanted to say that when I see on your show that you have all these friends that you're going to, I just feel like you're doing it right. So I feel like that should be validation for you that you're meeting people and it's not just you using your own authority and what you know, but you're also lifting them up. And there's a lot of really good back and forth where you're both helping each other help your listeners. So I think that's wonderful. You're doing a lot of really great interviews.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it because, every time when I say in the past few years of opening the pharmacy, running a business, running a successful business, employees, I do have about 14 employees right now. And to be able to take care of those people, take care of myself and take care of my community, the audience, it's amazing the number of things I have learned. Every day I say the number of things I've learned in the past few years of my life is more than what I've learned in the past 40 years of my life. So when I say, I was talking with my dermatologist the other day and inviting her to be on the podcast, and we're just talking about skincare. And she said, "Oh, Emlah, you're using that wrong. You're supposed to be using your micellar water to take off your makeup. Then you wash your face with your cleanser, before you apply your toner. And I'm like, oh, really? So I learn while I interview these guests along with my audience. So, and I hope that everybody's having a good time learning something. There's an alarming increase in the number of things that I don't know every single day.
Keeping it humble is a good feature of a podcast host because your audience probably didn't know that either. And we're all learning together. And if we ask questions that, looking back when we're editing or listening to the playback, that we thought, oh man, that was a dumb question, there's probably 15 people listening that think, oh, I didn't know that either. I'm so glad she asked that question. We're learning together, like you said. Yep. Now, I've noticed that you've done a mix of interviews and solo shows, probably more interviews at this point than solo shows. I like both. If my audience hasn't heard your podcast yet, what podcast episode do you think they should start with? Maybe one solo show, one interview show. I'm putting you on the spot.
Yes, you are putting me on the spot. I love the deep dive into the pillars of intentional living. That's usually a great place to start. Like, why this podcast? Why should you listen to Intentional Living with Emlah instead of all the other podcasts? If you have, my goal is to keep the podcast around, and that was selfishly for me because I drop my kids at school. Our ride to school is about 30 minutes every morning. So in that 30 minutes, when I drop them off on my way back to work, it takes me between 25 and 30 minutes. And I said, I want a podcast that I can listen to in one drive. So, and that's kind of how I determine the length for Intentional Living with Emlah. So my goal is for the podcast to typically be between 20 to 30 minutes. And sometimes it's nice to hear people talking and to giggle, but sometimes it's nice to hear somebody just teach. But too much of one becomes boring. So it's nice to do the interviews and it's nice to do some of the solos, even though I found that the solos are hard for me to do because I love people and I love talking with people. That's why majority of my episodes are interviews. And I have to really convince myself to do a solo. And I would only do a solo if I've had so many questions about that. I had too many questions about vitamin D and I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm doing a solo. But I love to do interviews because I love to learn from friends. But for the pillars of the deep dive into pillars of intentional living, I'm going to send you that link so you can share with your audience. That will be a good entry point. And then the solo episode, which is the one that has the highest listening, is the vitamin D. That is 17 minutes. And I think everybody listening now has 17 minutes to learn about what truly vitamin D is, what it does for your body, how can you put vitamin D on your plate, and really the benefits of vitamin D if you live above the 37 parallel, even if you don't live in Ohio. So just as a human, what truly is vitamin D and what's all the buzz about it?
Thank you for mentioning the vitamin D episode. I think, if nothing else, there's a call to action to find out what your vitamin D level is and personally reflect on, do I feel like I'm sick often? And if I am, maybe I should be looking into what's my level and maybe how can I get it closer to 70?
Yes.
Yep, that was a great episode. That might be my favorite one. Other than, I think there was the one where you were explaining the 4 pillars, and it seems like the drink tea was involved in that. Were you talking about
Yes.
you were sitting with your daughter and
And I'm
explaining
having
the
some
pillars
tea
to
right
her?
now.
Yeah, she has a white coffee cup and she's drinking from it. She's drinking the tea. But yeah, that I remember that being kind of the theme, spilling the tea about the 4 pillars of intentional living, right?
I love that.
And that's the episode that you would definitely recommend to my audience, right?
Yes, that is. That is.
All right. And now if you were to recommend an interview show that you would really like people to listen to, which one would that be?
I do an interview. There's one of the episodes where it's a deep dive onto the services that are offered at Powell Pharmacy. Not just because I want people to come to Powell Pharmacy, but also majority of your audience as on the Pharmacist Voice are pharmacists. And just to inspire pharmacists that they can do things differently. We don't have to do it the way we have always done it. So at Powell Pharmacy, our goal is how different can we be? Like how different can we be in everything that we do? How extra can we be? As my daughter would say, I have a 14-year-old daughter and she goes, Mom, you guys are extra. And yes, we are extra for a reason because we don't want the burnout. Because every time you talk with a pharmacist, half of the conversation is, tired, overworked, overstressed, not enough help. But our goal, as intentional at Powell Pharmacy, how can we not be that? So what are we going to do to make things different? I just made a post on LinkedIn the other day sharing our squat time, where at the top of the hour, so my pharmacy manager, Ronnie, and that is the interview that I'm going to tell you, like, that is the one that I would like people to listen to. That was one of the greatest interviews. I was asking her about her job working with me as the pharmacy manager at Powell Pharmacy and what she loves about it and the different services that we do and why is it so different from all the other jobs that she's had in the past. And so she set up a timer and it's on Alexa, it just says, it's time for squats at the top of every hour. And we stop what we're doing. We do 10 squats. That's what we used to do. Ronnie went on maternity leave, had a baby, came back, and she goes, 10 squats doesn't raise my heart rate, and I'm really needing to lose this baby weight. So we're going to make it 15 pounds. And I'm like, okay, boss. And everybody's like, really, 15? She's like, let's go right now.
15
Drop down
squats.
and give me 15 squats. So at the top of every hour at Powell Pharmacy, we do 15 squats. So if you think that's little, if you think that's like just child's play, for 7 hours of our 8-hour workday, that equates to 105 squats. So if you're working with me, you do 105 squats a day for your working day. Compare that with somebody who did no squats at home or who sat on their computer at their other job and just worked like that. So that's one of the episodes I talk about things, little things that we can work right into our workflow and stop complaining. Right after the squats, there's a lot of giggling, there's a lot of laughter, and there's like, oh, nobody's going to have to fart during this squat. It's like there has always somebody giggles. And then the patients walk in and they're like, oh my goodness, what is going on? Some patients just join in with us and some patients just give us a stare. And sometimes we have technicians on the phone squatting and talking to a patient on the phone. It is the most ridiculous sight you can ever imagine, but it always brings a smile to our faces and to the faces of our clients and patients. So that episode, Ronnie shares the different clinical services that we offer at Powell Pharmacy and some of those little intentional snacks that we add into our workday to lift our spirits and to improve our team culture. And which you can ask people, come visit us at the top of the hour or implement this at your workplace. Or if you're at home and implement it. But at the end of the day, you would have done more squats. Even if you do just one of those 15 hours, you would have done more squats than you did the previous day.
I think that is very impressive, more than 100 squats a day. And then I think if any patients are listening to this, or if they listened to that interview with Ronnie, they either avoid the top of the hour or they intentionally come to the top of the hour. That's great.
We give them challenges too. We send out newsletters, and sometimes at the bottom of the newsletter, we're like, if you read this far, come to the pharmacy and give us a special number of squats, and we'll do it just for you. So we've had patients walk in and go, I want 9 squats because that's what you said in the newsletter. And then we drop down and give them 9 squats, even if it's not at the top of the hour, just because a patient requested it. So they can give us a prescription of squats. So that's what, because we're giving them their prescription and they're giving us a prescription of squats. And the only condition is that they have to do it with us. So, and they giggle with that. So it's really fun. We engage our patients in our fun times.
That's a positive social interaction right there.
Yes,
I love that. I will definitely put all links to all 3 of those in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. Speaking of being intentional, I wanted to make sure to ask you a few questions for any pharmacists out there who are thinking about being a podcast host, a podcast guest, or just using their voice in general. So I'm going to ask you some questions about your podcast. And let's start with, where can my audience find your podcast? I think you already talked about 3 places. Could you repeat those for me?
Yes. So Intentional Living with Emlah Podcast can be found on the Apple Podcast, on Spotify, as well as YouTube. So whatever favorite podcast platform you have, we're on those 3. And hoping that gives as much broad access to everybody, and all the pharmacists listening to the Pharmacist Voice today can find us on those platforms.
Thank you for talking about that. As a personal comment from me, I just subscribed to you on YouTube recently when I listened to you singing the Christmas Carol episode. She's covering her face. But yeah, Emlah sings in this one. I think it must have been near Christmas, but I didn't realize that I could look on YouTube. You said something during the podcast episode in audio. I'm listening to you on Apple Podcasts, and I stop what I'm doing. I go over to YouTube because I didn't know you were, visually on there as a video podcast. Because you mentioned a shirt. Like if you look on the YouTube version, you can see my t-shirt and it says this, and it's like, you're all my friends or something like that. I love you all and you're all my friends. So I'm like, okay, I dropped what I'm doing. I go over to YouTube. I'm watching this. And not only can I read this shirt, but then I'm watching Emlah sing with her guest, who's a music teacher. It was awesome. Talk about bringing a smile to your face. And that goes along with the inner alignment and doing things that make you happy, right? What would you like to say about that?
I just love it because that friend of mine, Katie Sokot, she is a music teacher here at the Olentangy local schools, and she is so fun. When she comes to the pharmacy, we sing. Like she walks and breaks out in song, and we sing. And we have a history as friends. We went to our birthdays are just about 2 days apart, and
Oh,
we celebrate our birthday by going to a concert of our choices. Last year we went to John Baptiste when he came and that's where we bought those shirts which says "I love you," even if I don't know you. So it's like and it was red, so it fit with our Christmas, so we decided to wear it on the podcast. So it's again that positive social connection, bringing a smile when we walk around with those shirts. Somebody with a stern face and a frown, this frown just kind of softens. And I'm hoping that that's what the YouTube episodes will do for our audience. So that way we said, it's almost the same amount of energy, just a little slightly more to be able to put it on Apple and Spotify and YouTube. So let's just get it all done together. So we're not trying to do it later on. And so it's a little bit extra work, but so worth it to have the video go on as well. And so people can laugh with us and just as we share the stories.
thank you for talking about that. That was such a happy episode. Now, do you mind talking about the tech side of things? A lot of pharmacists that come to me as a podcast coach are a little intimidated by the technology. How'd you get over that part?
I got over it the same way I got over the difficulties of pharmacy school. So in pharmacy school, when you get into one of the most difficult classes for me was pharmacokinetics. And so when I walked into a pharmacokinetics class, I was already challenged because I heard from the students who were in the year before us, and they said, oh, that is the most difficult class. So you're already walking into it with anticipation, trepidation. You're just already freaking out before you're walking into it. So I said to myself, what can I do to prepare myself for this class? Who's the teacher? How can I make friends with the teacher? What's their office number? And what are their times? So can I go to them and ask questions? And can I read the book? Can I devote a little bit more time to pharmacokinetics than I'm devoting to all the other stuff? Because I already know that it's going to challenge me. So now I read about podcasting. I read articles. I listened to other podcasts about starting a podcast. So one thing about doing a podcast is that I have to listen to a lot of other podcasts. I listen to your podcast and then I reach out to you and then I get on other podcasts. You were one of the first podcasts that I was on as a guest. So, and I went back and listened to that. I listened to how you were interviewing me so I can learn from that. And I went on Tim's podcast. I went on other podcasts. I reached out to other podcasters and said, can I be a guest on your podcast? So that way you learn from other people. And that to me is one of the optimal ways of becoming a great podcaster and just listening. I make sure that I listen to one or two podcasts at least every time so that I'm learning something new, how to interview, how to pause. When that was one of the most difficult things for me. And when people are talking, I'm giggling or I'm laughing or I'm throwing in comments. That's just the normal Emlah. But the podcast version of me, I've been trying to reduce that, but sometimes it's really hard. I just be myself and I just talk. But I've found that it's just easier to be myself, but ask questions, reach out to other podcasters. And that's one of the things and just devote a little bit more time if it's challenging. The tech side of it is really challenging, but it's nothing that cannot be done and it's nothing that has not been done. So if you're encountering a problem, other people have encountered that problem to a varying degree and probably for a longer duration. So you're not alone, you're not the first one, and you're not that special. So if you remind yourself that, you will be able to reach out to people who have been there before and have the solutions that you're searching for.
Great advice. What I heard is you said, be a podcast guest first. and you learn a little bit about what it's like to be on the other side of the microphone. And you also get the ear of a podcaster and you can ask them questions, right? And then what I heard you also say is that you listen to good podcasts. You see how the host operates. These are all great pieces of advice. Anything else about production? I know that you are in association with Boom Media. You have said it on your podcast. Would you like to talk about them?
Yes, Boom Media is owned by my friend Erica Carl, and she does a fantastic job. So a lot of times, a successful professional is one who knows what they can do and what they cannot do and their limits, and when to outsource as a business owner. So there's certain things that you ask other people to do for you, like a pharmacist. You have a technician, you have somebody at the checkout counter, you have all the other people that help you work in your team. But Boom Media does the editing for me, and they do the visuals and the technical side and all the other aspects, which as a pharmacist, I don't have the time, energy, and resources to do. Other pharmacists do their editing and all their technical side. It's something that I could do, but my hands are full. And again, being intentional. Priority for me is my three children. I do have a 16, 14, and 11-year-old, and that is priority. So my calendar is done, and then every other thing else fills in the spaces. So, and if there is no space for that thing, then I cut it. So I usually use like the 3 Ds, and I do it, and I delegate it, or I delete it. So when it comes to my children, I'm doing. When it comes to work, I can either delegate it, I would do it, delegate it, or delete it. And for my podcasting, I delegated the editing and all the other work to, and taking out the snippets that we use for Instagram and Facebook to Hey Boom. And Erica and Harmony are my podcast producers, and they do a phenomenal job with all that. And we record next week we're recording a new Journeys ad because the podcast is sponsored by the lab services. And so, and we'll be recording that, and they do a fantastic job with that. So know when to do, when to delegate, and when to delete. And that's all, again, part of intentional living and very personalized. So certain things which will be priority for you to do, which will be something for me to delegate, and will be something for our next girlfriend to delete. So that's how you keep your plate nice and small, so you're not overwhelmed. And I usually look at my list and take off certain things, and the ability to say no to things that do not serve me at this moment, not meaning that they may not serve me in the future, but they might have been serving me in the past. But that ability is really, truly intentional living.
I love how intentional you have been about the production, the recording, editing, and publishing of your podcast in audio and video. That is no small feat. To delegate that to someone whose area of subject matter expertise is audio editing and video editing and creating those social media promotional clips. That's brilliant. I think more people should consider doing that because that's one of the things that keeps pharmacists from starting podcasts. They want to do it all themselves because, we have taken the hard classes like pharmacokinetics. And yeah, we just think, oh, if I could do that, I can do the other thing too. But if that's what's holding you back, then delegate it. I love that you talked about that. Thank you so much, Emlah.
I appreciate that, because even though we don't, as pharmacists, we don't talk about that a lot, because you said it correctly. We have done the hard stuff, and pharmacists are doers. Pharmacists are high achieving, smart, intelligent, extremely hardworking people. I know a ton of pharmacists, and they all fit in this criteria. So, and they're like, if it's not perfect. So I listened to Eddie Bartlett, and he said, if you don't go back to your first episodes and listen to them and cringe, then you waited too long.
I went back to my first episodes and I still cringe, probably the first 100. I didn't know very much about audio editing. I feel like you came out the gate sounding great and looking great too. Your videos are really well done. And you always look so relaxed and happy. And I think I know it's because you don't have to edit your own work. And I'm serious. It makes a huge difference when you're the producer, the editor, the director, the talent, everything all at the same time. There's a little bit of pressure there, I got to tell you.
That's a challenge of small business, right? That's a challenge of small business. So we have to, like you said it at the beginning of this podcast, build a tribe. Yeah, when you said the word tribe, I go, this girl knows what's up. And that's one of the reasons why we're friends. You know that building a tribe, on days that I need to lean into Kim, I will lean into her. On days that I know I need to lean into Erica, I lean in on her. And that's really how it works. And I have Ronnie, my right-hand person at the pharmacy. And days that I say, Ronnie, come, let's go record a podcast. And she's there, and we have it scheduled all out, and we're recording. And so that way we're not missing a week. We're releasing every Wednesday. We have a new episode release.
The weekly publication schedule, it can be kind of tough. It can be challenging. You have to be ready. And I think we talked a little bit off camera or off mic before we started recording about how you do two at a time too. And I think my audience that's interested in being a podcast host might be interested in that. You're batching them. That's what I call it when you do two or more at the same time. How's that working for you?
It's amazing. So we get to do every other Tuesday, we do the recording, and we just record two. So we're ahead of the game. And then we have 2 weeks to work, what we need to work for the next ones. And we do two at a time. And we recorded a few before we launch, so that way we always have extra in case a guest is not well or rescheduled or something goes on. We have reserve.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that behind the scenes information. That's smart to have one in the can, so to speak. You always have one in reserve just in case, like you said, somebody gets sick or schedules don't match or whatever the case may be. I heard you earlier saying that there's some sort of a call to action, some intentional call to action at the end of each of your episodes. Can you talk about that?
Call it the intentional initiative. And I have those at the bottom of my newsletter as well. I'm going to send you a link for my newsletter. I write my newsletters and write about, something that can help pharmacists or something that can help our audience. And then I talk about a supplement highlight. And it's usually Supplement School with Emlah. So in the podcast, there's usually a little segment, Supplement School with Emlah. And I say, there's no exam, there's no test. I'm just going to teach you about a supplement. One or two little nuggets about a supplement so you know it coming from an expert. And the final piece is intentional initiative. So one small change you can make. Think of the squats that you could change, to think about a 10-minute doing nothing, which is a time you just sit on the couch and do nothing. Literally set a timer to do nothing and just allow your brain to wander. It's relieving. It's like washing your face. But just think about it washing your mind in a very clear way. And that realigns your hormones, realigns that inner alignment. So those little things. And we have everybody, I ask all my guests to share, pause, and breathe. And some teach breathing techniques, some teach or just stretching techniques. It's just wonderful, all the different nuggets that we get from people. I love to learn from all our guests.
Something different every episode, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that you're intentional about it. And I think that's a really great opportunity for podcast hosts to have that call to action somewhere in the podcast. What do you want the audience to do with this information? Well, you get to call the shot. You're the host.
Yes.
Love it. What do you like most about podcasting?
Just the recording. There's certain things in life that you dread doing, but you have to do them anyways. But podcasting is one of those things which I absolutely love. I love waking up and getting ready and going to the podcast studio to record. I just love. So even if we did not have to air the episode, just recording it is kind of pleasant. I love doing it. So just sitting down like we're doing this now and just talking with you, it's so fun for me. I just love it. So even if this did not air, which I would hate for it not to air, because I feel like there's a lot of information that your listeners can learn from this and from all your podcasts episodes, but just the opportunity to sit down with a friend and just chat. To me, it's enhancing my positive social connections, and that's selfish for me. But I take care of myself first, and then all the people listening to the podcast, maybe they'll feel as good as I felt recording it.
Thank you for talking about that. It is okay for you to get something out of podcasting. It should, of course, be created with the audience in mind, but it's okay for you to get something out of it. And I appreciate you talking about what you get out of it and that you don't dread it and you don't hesitate to do it. You show up and you're joyful about it.
Yes.
That's awesome. All right. Now, I got to flip the coin here. What's one of your biggest challenges as a podcast host?
The biggest challenge as a podcast host is figuring out who to bring on as a guest and figuring out what do I want my audience to learn from this person. So I figure out, okay, and I have to bring it personal. I have to stop and really be intentional about this. Who are my friends that I've learned something great from and I would like to share with my audience? And I write down their names and then I reach out to them and I say, hey, I'd like to have you on my podcast. Sometimes they don't have the time. Sometimes they're busy with work. They're busy with their children and everything. But I keep that invitation open. I reach out to them again and I say, hey, I'm flexible, would like to work with you. I feel like I'm inspired by your work and I feel like my audience will benefit from you. So, and that's kind of how I look at it. You know, if I've benefited from somebody, I like to bring them on the podcast so they can share what I learned from them with my audience. I could say it, but sometimes it's just more powerful. You know, I reached out to a sleep doctor whom I have been talking with, and I just learned so much from him, and I invited him to be on the podcast. You know, I reached out to an ophthalmologist and say, hey, come to the podcast, teach us how to take care of our eyes. You know, so and that the most difficult part is identifying those people and actually matching schedules with them to be on the podcast. I have a friend in New York and I really want her to be on the podcast, but the time and her work. But that's one of the challenges. And such is life, but we'll overcome.
I like that you care about the messenger for the message that you want to get across. So it sounds like you have a message in mind that you want to communicate, but you care about having the right messenger. But then you also recognize how difficult or challenging it may be to schedule the right messenger for that message for your audience at the time you want them. I know that can be a challenge. Thank you for talking about that. As we get towards the end here, what surprised you most about podcasting?
Before starting it, I was dreading it. I was afraid. And, you know, as you could tell, I was postponing it and hoping that it will all be perfect before I start. And when I started, I actually enjoyed it much more than I thought I would because the pharmacist part of me was wanting everything to be perfect. As pharmacists, we check prescriptions. We cannot make an error. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be 100% accurate. So we got to check, 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 and then check again. And if you're doing that with podcasting, you will probably never start. So I had to use the other side of my brain to say, it's okay, just go ahead and launch. We'll fix it as we go. And that's really tough. And that's difficult for a pharmacist to do. So I understand other pharmacists out there trying to start a podcast, but our pharmacist brain is going check, 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 5-point check, 10-point check, and then look, do something else, come back and check again. So, because that's the pharmacist's brain. So we have to step out of a pharmacist's brain for a little bit before we come back into it in order to be able to truly launch. And that was one of I don't know if that answers the question. You know, that's kind of how.
What I'm hearing you saying is that you had to resist the urge to get ready, to get ready, to get ready to podcast, right? That was the biggest surprise. Like
Yes.
how much you had to get out of your own head and just do
Yes.
the darn thing.
And when I did it, I was like, oh, this is it. It's done. And I was like, oh, I should have done it a long time ago, but it's okay.
You're not the only person to say that, but you're a success story and you are inspiring my audience who, again, might be looking to start a podcast, be a podcast guest, or just use their voice in general. Yeah, for them to hear about what you're talking about kind of might validate some of the thoughts they have in their head that they're not sharing because they're afraid that's not the right thing to share. They're getting ready to share something that privately they want to share. I get it. And I think a lot of pharmacists, that will resonate with a lot of pharmacists, maybe even some technicians who might be listening to this podcast episode.
I love the name of your podcast, The Pharmacist's Voice. It speaks to me. It speaks to me because pharmacists, we have it all in the head. We are so smart. We have it on there, but we don't translate it to our voice. We don't bring it out and teach the community. And I always remind my pharmacists when I do a lot of CEs for state organizations, national organizations. And I say, all that knowledge you have in your head, that clinical aptitude, our community is dying to learn just an inch of it, just 1/10 of it. They just want to learn, 1/10 of what you have in your head. One day we're all going to die as pharmacists and take all that knowledge with us to the grave. We don't want to. We want to teach the people, the community. So I just love the name of your podcast just to bring out the pharmacist's voice. And every pharmacist that I talk to, I learned something from them. And I love that you have this platform for us to come and use our voice, share our voice, and so that the people can learn from us. I love it.
Thank you very much. I think you're validating the reason I have a podcast. That's wonderful.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you started it, and I'm glad you had me on, and I'm really honored to be You make it so easy to do it.
It's my pleasure. I feel like we're all resources for one another. I'm building on or echoing what you just said. You feel like there's so many people out there who have resources in their head and they just need to let it out through their voice.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. And somebody needed to hear that today. So thank you for saying it so my audience can hear it.
I love it. I love it.
Well, we're almost done. I guess I'm looking for advice. I need you to be a big sister to my audience at this point. If somebody out there listening to this wants to start a podcast, what advice do you have for them?
My recommendation will be select about 5 pharmacists who are already doing a podcast. Follow their podcast, number one, or subscribe. Number two, listen to at least 5 episodes of each of those pharmacist podcasts. First thing I did, listen to 5 episodes of yours, listen to 5 episodes of 5 different pharmacists. That's a total of 25 different episodes. That's a good baseline to start. I know what 5 different pharmacists are doing. I've listened to 5 different episodes, so I get 5 different tastes from 5 different people. It improves, one, your confidence, and two, it gives you so many ideas. And you write down. And when you listen to the episodes, always have a piece of paper, write down, and this is what I did. So 25 different pages, and your podcast were some of those. So and just to get how she talks, and how she interviews, how she asks questions, and how she listens for the answer, and how she asks the next question, and just basic things, and how she titles the podcast. And I just went on your LinkedIn page, and I just saw how you posted about your different episodes. And then and also all the other episodes. And then listen to non-pharmacist ones as well, and pick your favorite episodes and just listen to them with the ear of learning, not just listening to the podcast like I would listen on my drive, taking my son to soccer. I listen to when I'm driving with him. I don't listen to the podcast. I listen to something that he wants. And then when I'm driving by myself, I listen to my podcast. And that is different from listening to learn, because listening to learn, I'm sitting down with a pen and paper. I'm listening to learn, and then I'm listening to just assimilate as I go. So that will be the first step to do that. And then that will guide you onto your next step. But then, and reach out to those pharmacists, and they can help you in several different ways. And I'm one of those. I'm welcome. Please reach out to me. hello@dremlahtubuo.com is my email. I'm going to share it with you so you can put it in the show notes. So you can reach out to me. And I have a Let's Connect form on there, which I would email to you, and you can share in the show notes. I would love to help. Zig Ziglar said the best way to get everything you want in life is to help enough other people get what they want. And that has been true in my life. So I love helping people get what they want so I can get what I want.
Way to pay it forward. I really like that you're offering to help other people. I have helped a lot of other people for free,
Included.
in little, in little chunks.
I am evidence.
Thank you for saying that. Some people turn into clients, of course, but that's not always my intention. There's a little bit that I'll give back to pay it forward, because so many people have helped me to get to this point too, whether they pointed me in the right direction, or they've cautioned me against something, or they told me something I need to stop, or something I need to start. It's kind of like what we as pharmacists do with patients and
Yes.
medications, but it's just in the podcasting realm instead. So thank you for talking about how you're willing to pay it forward too. You've paid forward a lot today. I think you've talked about lessons learned all throughout this podcast episode. And it's been so easy to talk to you because I know you in real life, and this has been wonderful. We've kind of like caught up, and I've also got the behind the scenes about some things I was wondering about. So this has been awesome for me. As we truly end our time together, I'd like to give you an open mic moment and ask you, is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Anything with your business you'd like to promote? Anything coming up with speaking opportunities? Merchandise you'd like to sell? I know it's a big ask, but the floor is yours, Emlah.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. First of all, I have to say I'm really honored to be a guest on this podcast. But my goal is to encourage pharmacists to stay away from the complaining side and be able to come up with solutions. So take inventory about your life. We as pharmacists tend to take inventory of medications on the shelf, but stop and take inventory on your life. What are you excited about? What do you love? What are you looking forward to? What are you doing on a daily basis which improves that, which leads to that? writing down your values, reevaluating yourself, and who's going to help you achieve those things. So reorganize your life and then prioritize in such a way that, to me, intentional living is matching your daily actions with your values and your goals in life and being consistent about that. And I help people do that. So reach out to me, and I have a connect form, connect with me, and I can help you. I'm also a life coach and emotional intelligence coach, in addition to being the entrepreneur that I am. But this is what I love, to have people discover about themselves and be able to truly achieve their own goals, whether it's in pharmacy practice or being able to blend your life with your pharmacy practice, or figure out ways to separate it to be more efficient in those ways. And just teaching pharmacists to discuss dietary supplements with confidence is one of my passions. So if you're interested, if you've heard me talk about dietary supplements, vitamins, minerals, biomarkers, and I'm partnering with Fullscript to launch the lab testing platform journeys to pharmacists across, and just having access to supplements. And this is something that every pharmacist should, because we should be the people that patients come to when they need to ask a question about a supplement, not to a supplement or vitamin store. We are the ones with the clinical knowledge. So empower yourself so the patients, you feel comfortable answering all the questions that patients come with. So I do have a course on that. I do have Lunch and Learns, which I will share with you. So I am available, and I have lots of resources for people who have helped me. If I cannot help you, I will refer you to somebody that can help you. So as we hold hands to have you have your practice empower you and empower the people around you, so you can do what you want for as long as you want, with who you want, as long as you want.
Thank you for talking about that. If anybody wants to check out your course or connect with you as their coach or anything, it's all through your website, right? DrEmlahtTubuo.com.
Yes. So DrEmlahtTubuo.com, and there's a tab that says Pharmacist Resources. And so there's a ton of resources there, but I have all the other things on there. But also a link on your show notes, I'm going to connect with me, and they can just literally put in their email name and then send me any questions, and I'll get those as an email. And I promise I respond to every single email that I get from the connect with me, because I know this is somebody who listened to my podcast or a podcast that I was a guest on and has a question for me. So they did listen to a podcast. And what an honor to know that we put in this work to record a podcast and people are actually listening and they do have a question. So I'm honored. It's like a teacher, when you finish teaching and a child asks a question, that means they listened and they want to know more. So it's an honor.
You reward people who take the initiative to reach out. And I appreciate you saying that you personally answer all emails.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
Dr. Emlah Tubuo, thank you for being on the Pharmacist's Voice podcast again and talking about your podcast. I will put all those links in the show notes on the pharmacistvoice.com. And thank you again for being here today. Take care.
I'm honored. Thank you for having a space where the pharmacist's voice matters. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. I'll see you at the OPA annual meeting in April.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks again to Dr. Emlah Tubuo for being my guest today. I just loved hearing her talk about all things podcasting. She has come a long way in just 6 months. As I publish this on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, Emlah has published more than 20 episodes. By my count, it is 24 episodes since September 2025, including a trailer episode, which I highly recommend people start with. During our conversation, Emlah also dispensed some really great advice, not just for pharmacists, but also for pharmacist podcasters. She said, don't wait until everything is perfect to get started. And she also said, think of podcasting as a challenging pharmacy course, like pharmacokinetics. You wouldn't just start doing pharmacokinetics without studying or talking to a professor or practicing some problems first, right? So, if you want to start a podcast, study podcasting, learn as a guest, or listen to some good podcasts and take notes. You can connect with podcast hosts such as Emlah or myself and just ask for advice. People have been very generous with me as I got started back in 2019, and I'm happy to pay some of that forward in small doses. No matter what you do, just get started. Don't get ready to get ready to get ready. I put a long list of the lessons that we can all learn from Emlah from this episode in the show notes today. So check those out. There's probably 20 bullet points. Also, in the show notes, these are really long show notes today. I will let you know what you can find. Lots of information and links. First of all, I've got links to where you can find Intentional Living with Emlah podcast. I've got an Apple Podcasts link, a Spotify link, and a YouTube link. Also, I've got links to all of the episodes of Intentional Living with Emlah podcast that were mentioned. There's the deep dive on the 4 pillars, the vitamin D solo episode, the interview with Ronnie, her pharmacist at Powell Pharmacy, and the Christmas/holiday episode with the music teacher where Emlah sings. That was published on December 24th, which was Christmas Eve 2025. It's a fun and happy episode. Also in the show notes, I have Emlah's bio. It's current as of February 2026. I've got the lessons learned. There's a ton of bullet points. You will see them there. And I've also got a link to subscribe to Emlah's newsletter. And she's given me links to 2 issues of previous newsletters that you may want to check out so you know what you're getting when you subscribe. I'm almost done letting you know what's in the show notes. I wanted to let you also know that there are links to Emlah's business website, which is dremlahtubuo.com, all spelled out. That's DREMLAHTUBUO, dremlahtubuo.com. I've got her LinkedIn link. I've got some education that she offers on her website. I've got information about the Journeys lab testing. I've got all kinds of stuff in these show notes. And if you ever want to listen to the other episodes of the Pharmacist Podcasters series, I've got all 13 of the other episodes in there in the show notes as well. Dr. Emlah Tubuo's episode was the 14th episode here today. That's it for the show notes. This has been the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, episode 367. If you know someone who might like this episode, maybe they want to start a podcast, be a podcast guest, or just do some public speaking, please share this episode with them. And if you need help starting a podcast, I can help. I coach students one-on-one. I also sell a self-paced online course. And I sell a book about podcasting. I wrote a book. It's called Pharmacist Podcaster, a podcast planning guide for pharmacy professionals. You can get my book in print, ebook, and audiobook on Amazon.com. There's a link in the show notes, of course. You can also listen to the episodes about podcasting in my back catalog on thepharmacistvoice.com, or you can check them out on YouTube as well. And if you like this podcast, come on back. We've got a lot more coming up here in 2026. Subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist's Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thanks for listening today. Happy podcasting, and I'll talk to you next month.